Hello viewers, welcome to my channel. I'm Hasham Khan. So continuing the last session, this is the second video on introduction to statistics. In the last video, I've explained you the meaning, the definition, the history, development of statistics, then advantages, limitation, distrust of statistics that we have discussed in the last video. Continuing, this is the last second video on introduction to statistics. Now I'm going to continue with collection of data. Data is the foundation for any statistical analysis and interpretation. So collection of data is critical for any statistical analysis and interpretation. So the data collection is the first step. Hence data should be critically collected and analyzed. That is the basic first step in analysis and interpretation. Now data can be collected through internal records or through primary sources or through secondary sources. So first of all, what are internal records? A lot of data is generated internally within the organization. Nowadays, due to the advent of computers, a lot of data is generated within the organization for the purpose of statutory requirement or for the purpose of management, and this data can be used for statistical analysis. This is the internal data. Apart from that, primary and secondary data will be collected. Now I am going to explain you regarding primary and secondary data, which will be frequently asked in examination. Now, first of all, primary data. The data which is specifically collected for our purpose, for the statistical inquiry. I am the investigator. I am collecting the data first time for our study only. This type of data is called primary data. It is the raw data which is specifically collected for the purpose of our survey, of our research. So that is called primary data. Secondary data, the data which is collected by some other agency for some other purpose, but we are taking that data for our research, for our survey. Then the data which is collected by some other person, but we are borrowing it, we are taking it for our study. It is called secondary data. So in any statistical analysis, we collect the data internally through records or primary sources or secondary sources. These are the different sources through which data can be collected. Now in examination, a theory question may be asked, what are the differences between primary data and secondary data? Many differences are there. The data which is first time collected for our study, for our survey, it is called primary data. The data which is collected by some other agency for some other purpose, but we are taking the data for our study, it is called secondary data. The primary data is in raw form, whereas secondary data is already in processed form. Already it is processed form. The primary data requires more time, effort, cost, whereas the secondary data is already available. It requires less time, less cost, less effort. The primary data is specifically collected for our purpose, so it is more reliable. Whereas secondary data is not collected for our purpose, it is collected for some other purpose. But we are taking the data for our study, so it may not be so relevant. So these are some of the differences between primary data and secondary data. Next comes advantages and limitations of primary data. So primary data, secondary data, both will have their own advantages and limitation. The advantage of primary data is it is specifically collected for our study. So it is more relevant, so more reliable. It is more correct, whereas secondary data is not so much of correct. So secondly, the primary data is collected by the person who is conducting the study. So it has direct relationship with our study. So this is another advantage. But the disadvantage of primary data is it requires more cost. Comparatively, more cost is required, more time is spent. Secondly, the primary data collected by the person may not be appropriate for our study. There are chances of misrepresenting or misleading the collection of data. That may be the disadvantage. Similarly, advantage and limitation of secondary data. The advantages are it is processed by another person, by another agency. the agency is a specialized agency in collecting the data and analyzing the data. So by experts, the data is processed. So that is the advantage. Secondly, it is less cost compared to primary data. Secondary data is less expensive. Less cost is incurred to collect the secondary data, right? But the disadvantage of secondary data is it may not be relevant for our purpose. It is relevant for some other purpose. Another chance is it may become outdated, because suppose the secondary data was collected very long back, now we are taking the secondary data, means it has become outdated. So there are some disadvantages of secondary data. Now, methods of collecting primary data. Now we are going to study what are the methods of collecting primary data and what are the methods collecting secondary data. The primary data can be collected either by direct personal interview or by indirect oral investigation or information received through local agencies or mailed questionnaire method or schedule sent through enumerators. These are the different methods through which primary data can be selected. First one, direct personal interview. The person who is investigating will approach the person from whom the data has to be collected personally. He will go, suppose I am the person who is making the investigation, I am making the research, I want to collect the data from the persons. I will approach that person personally and ask him to give the information. So personal interview is the first method of collecting the primary data. So it is good method, but this method will have their own advantages and limitations. The advantage is I am personally going to the place from where I can be able to get the information. I will ask the questions to that person and collect the data. The data will be very much relevant for our study. There are less chances of misrepresentation or misunderstanding. That will not be there. That is the advantage. But the disadvantage is we cannot be able to cover up the large area. The cost incurred will be more. These are the things, these are the disadvantages of direct personal interview. Second, indirect oral investigation. Sometimes we will not get the direct information from the respondent. We have to collect indirectly from other persons. For example, there are some social evils like gambling, drinking or smoking. Directly the person will not say I am gambling, I am doing gambling, or I am smoking. The person will not say. So indirectly through some other person we have to collect the data. That is called indirect oral investigation. So directly, instead of directly going to the respondent, through indirect ways we want to collect the information. Third one is information received through local agencies. Sometimes the investigator will appoint a person, an agent, to collect the information and pass it to the enumerator. Example, I am the person who is making the research. I want to collect primary data. I have appointed correspondence agents at different places to collect the information and send it to me. So instead of directly collecting, I have appointed the agents or correspondents to collect the data and send it to me. This is also one of the method of collecting the primary data. Mailed questionnaire method. This mailed questionnaire method is a method in which a questionnaire will be prepared, a form will be prepared, leaving the space for writing the answer, and these forms will be sent to the respondents through post. Through post, the person who is receiving that questionnaire has to fill up that questionnaire and send it back to the sender. This is called mailed questionnaire method. In this way also we can be able to collect the information, collect the data. This method will have their own advantages as well as limitations. The advantage is it's more reliable because the person is writing in his own hand and submitting it to the researcher. So it is more reliable and less costly because the cost incurred in collecting the data is very less, and the vast geographical area can be covered through this mailed questionnaire form. But the disadvantage is it is not compulsory, it is not sure that the person will respond, will give the correct data. There are chances that we may not be able to get the correct information. Next one is schedule sent through enumerators. In this case, enumerators are appointed. Suppose I am the researcher, I have selected a team of 5 members. I have given the forms to the 5 members and sent them to different places to collect the information. So enumerators will go to the place of persons from whom we have to get the information and will ask the questions. When they give the answers, the enumerators will write in his own handwriting that form and submit it to the researcher. This method is called schedule sent through enumerators. So these are the methods which are applied in primary data collection. Now, mailed questionnaire method, its merit and limitation. Just now I told you, in this mailed questionnaire method, questionnaire will be prepared and send it to the respondent through post, and through post the researcher will get the data, right? And there are many advantages, limitations. Just now I told you the advantage is vast geographical area can be covered, less expensive, and we can be able to get the correct information from the respondents. These are the advantages. But limitations are, the data may not be correct. The data supplied by the respondents may not be true. There is no guarantee, there is no surety. It is not sure that the enumerators will cooperate in sending the data. These are the disadvantages. Now, points to be noted while framing a questionnaire. The questionnaire should be carefully framed, otherwise the respondents will not respond, will just throw the questionnaire away, they will not cooperate. So carefully questionnaire should be prepared. So what are the points to be kept in mind while making this questionnaire? First one, the size. The size of the questionnaire should be as minimum as possible. Should not be more elaborate, it should not be lengthy, because the respondents will not give much time to give all the information. So minimum, the size of the questionnaire should be minimum. Then clarity. There should not be any ambiguity regarding the questions. The questions raised should be completely clear. Unambiguous questions should be given. Clear in mind. There should not be any two meanings of those questions. Then sequence. The sequence should be properly framed. That means all the questions must have the link with one another. Next one is easy to respond. The questions which I am sending to the respondent should be easy to understand, easy to respond. That means the respondents should be very free to give the required data to the company. Then confidentiality. We should assure to the respondent that confidentiality will be maintained regarding the data which you are supplying. We are not going to disclose it to anyone else. Questions to be avoided. Some personal questions should be avoided in the questionnaire. Otherwise, the respondents will not give the personal details. So these are the points to be remembered while framing the questionnaire. So in examination, very often a theory question will be asked regarding what do you mean by mailed questionnaire method and what are the points to be kept in mind while framing the questionnaire. So these are the points you have to remember. Now, merits and schedules sent through enumerators. Last one, schedules sent through enumerators. Actually, questionnaire method and schedules sent through enumerators, both are very much similar. In both cases, we are collecting the data from the respondents. The only difference is mailed questionnaire will be sent through post, whereas schedules sent through enumerators will not be sent through post, but enumerators are sent to the place of the person from whom we are collecting the data. Enumerators will approach the respondents, ask different questions, and fill the questionnaire in their own hand, through their own hand. So schedules sent through enumerators. Merits and limitations of schedules. There are advantages as well as limitations. The advantages are, suppose some of the respondents are illiterate, they cannot be able to understand, read and write. In this case, enumerator can approach them and ask them and fill in their own handwriting. So this is the advantage of enumerators. But the disadvantage is we cannot be able to cover up large area, just like mailed questionnaire. In mailed questionnaire method, we can cover up a large geographical area, but schedules cannot be sent to large geographical area. That's the disadvantage. Secondly, the cost incurred in schedules sent through enumerators will be more, whereas the cost incurred on mailed questionnaire will be less. So these are the advantages and limitations of mailed questionnaire. Now, differences between schedules and questionnaire. Just now I told you many differences are there. Questionnaire method will be sent through post and schedules will be sent through enumerators. That is the first difference. Second difference, when we send the questionnaire through post, the respondent should be educated. They can be able to understand what questions are there. They can be able to read and write. But in case of schedules, it is not compulsory that the respondent should be educated, because the enumerators can be able to tell them. Similarly, the next difference is in questionnaire we can cover large area through post, whereas in schedules sent through enumerators we cannot be able to cover up large area. Large area cannot be covered up. Similarly, next thing is in questionnaire method. In questionnaire method, we are directly collecting the information from the respondents, whereas in case of schedules method, indirectly through enumerators we are getting the information. Now, the success of schedules sent through enumerators depends on the tact, on the dynamism of the enumerators. Whereas in case of questionnaire, simply it is sent to the respondent will read and send the information. So these are the differences between schedules and questionnaire. Now, sources of secondary data. So far we have discussed about primary data. Now, secondary data. From where we can be able to get the secondary data? Secondary data is the data which is collected by some other agency, but we are taking the data from that other agency. So what are the sources? Official publications of international bodies like UNO or foreign governments. Nowadays, due to globalization, we want the information through international bodies also like UNO or foreign government. So publications made by UNO or its subsidiaries or foreign government, from there we can be able to collect the secondary data. Secondly, official publications of central and state government. Time to time the central government and state government will give publications which is open to all, which is available to all. So a person, an investigator, can collect the data from government publications, state government or central government. Semi-official publication, various bodies like municipal corporation. Semi-government departments like municipal corporations, they will also publish the data. So an investigator can collect the data from municipal corporations. Third, private publications such as publication of trade and professional bodies, chambers of commerce. These chamber of commerce or other associations, they will publish a number of data. So an investigator can collect the data. Even professional organizations like ICAI, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Apart from that, there are other financial economic journals and annual reports published by joint stock companies or publication brought by research institutes. All these are the other sources which has collected the data and processed it, and we can collect the data from those agencies. So these are the sources from which secondary data can be collected. Now, methods of collecting data. Broadly, we divide the methods into two: census method and sampling method. Census method means when each and every item of the population is considered, is selected. For example, we want to check the height of 30 students in a class. 30 students are there in a classroom. We want to record the height of all the 30 students. So we are measuring the height of all 30 students. It is called census method. Each and every item of the population we are considering, we are studying, it is called census. But there are many disadvantages of census. The disadvantage is more time will be required, more cost will be required, more effort will be required. To reduce that, the second method will be normally used to collect the data. The second method is sampling method. Sampling means taking a part of the population, studying that part and giving the opinion about the population. Example, in a school, totally 500 students are there. It will be highly difficult to measure the height of all 500 students. So randomly, we are selecting some 50 students out of 500 students. and calculating and measuring the average height of 50 students. Whatever average height of 50 students, we assume that this is the average of all the 500 students. That means studying about the part and giving the opinion about the whole. That is called sampling method. The sampling method will be applied to collect the data. It has the advantages and limitations. The first advantage is we are saving the time, we are saving the cost, we are saving the effort. But the disadvantage is we are not considering each and every item of the population. There are chances of misleading conclusion, wrong conclusion. Next comes classification of data and objectives. Classification means grouping the data. After collecting the data, directly we cannot make analysis. Before analysis, the data which is collected should be properly classified. Making groups. Why we have to make the groups? The raw data cannot be used for analysis. So before analysis, it should be properly systematically classified. Making groups. For example, in a classroom there are suppose 100 students are there. We want to find out what is the average, marks of the students. So instead of taking all 100 students, we group the students. We put a group. A group consists of 0 to 10 marks. So how many students are there who got the marks from 0 to 10? How many students are there who got the marks from 10 to 20, 20 to 30? Like that classification, grouping we are making. So by making the group, it will be very easier for making the analysis. That is the purpose, objective of classification. Now types of variable. 3 types of variables are there: individual variable, discrete variable and continuous variable. Individual series. The individual series means the items are individually recorded without any grouping or without any classification. Without any classification. For example, 10 students are there in a class. Only 10 students. So we have recorded the marks scored by 10 students. First student got, let it be 55 marks. Second student got 40 marks. Third student got 70 marks. Fourth student got 90 marks. Fifth student got 10 marks. Like that, individually I am writing the marks. That is called individual series. Now discrete series. Discrete series means where a value can take only a whole number, not a fraction, not a range of values. Integer, the values will take only whole number, the value will not take any fractional value. Simple example, the runs scored by a batsman. The runs scored may be 1 run, 2 run, 3 run, 4 run. There cannot be 1.5 run, 2.5 run. Fractional values may not exist. So this type of data where only whole number can be considered, fractional will not arise. That is called discrete series. Another example, number of children in a family. The children may be 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. There won't be 1.5, 2.5 children. So this type of data where it will take a whole number, it is called discrete series. Continuous series means a value will take a range from this point to that point. For example, 0 to 10. From 0 to 10, 10 to 20 means any value will come between 0 to 20, whether it is a whole number or a fraction. A range of values will fall within a group. That is called continuous group. Example of continuous group, the marks scored 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30 like that. It's a example of continuous variable or continuous series. Now class limits, class boundaries and midpoint. In case of continuous series, we will have the classes. Classes will show the boundaries within which the items will lie. Example 0 to 10. 0 to 10 is a class interval, is a class boundary. The lower limit is 0, upper limit is 10. The below 0 value or over 10 value will not fall. All the values between 0 and 10 only will fall. That is called class limit, class boundary. Then midpoint. The value which is exactly in the middle of that class. Example 0 is the lower limit, 10 is the upper limit. What is exactly in between 0 plus 10 divided by 2 is 5. The midpoint is 5. Similarly, second class 10 to 20. 10 to 20, what is exactly in the middle? So add up 10 plus 20 divided by 2. 30 divided by 2 is 15. 15 is the midpoint. Next comes exclusive method, inclusive method. There are two types of problems in continuous series: exclusive method and inclusive method. Exclusive method means a method in which lower limit will be recorded, will be considered, upper limit will not be considered. Upper limit will be considered in the next class. Example, 0 to 10, then 10 to 20. Now the question arises whether 10 should be considered in the first class or second class. So in exclusive method, the upper boundary will be excluded. The upper boundary is 10. 10 should be excluded, should not be included. So 10 will be included in the next class, 10 to 20. Similarly, 20 will not be considered in second class. 20 will be considered in the third class. So lower limit will be included, upper limit will be excluded. That is called exclusive series. Inclusive series, both upper limit and lower limit both will be considered. 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29. This is called inclusive series. Because in every class, we are considering the lower limit and we are considering the upper limit. It is called inclusive series. Now classification and tabulation. These two terms are different. Classification means grouping. Grouping the complete data into specific groups, specific classes. The grouping of a complete data into specific classes is called classification. Tabulation means when complete classification is considered, done, then that classification will be put in a table. That is called tabulation. For example, in a class 100 students are there. We want to classify the students into groups. So the marks are classified in 10 groups. 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30. So 100 students we are classifying in 10 groups. So 0 to 10, 10 to 20. So before making the tabulation, first of all we must consider in our mind that how many groups we are making, what is the size of each group. So after making that classification, now we have to make the tabulation. So when classification ends, tabulation will begin. Tabulation means putting the classification in a table form. That's all. So this is the complete explanation of the first part, that is Introduction to Statistics. So if you are satisfied with my lecture, give a like to the video, share it in your group, in your friend circle, give your comments, and don't forget to subscribe my channel if you have not yet subscribed.